So before we jump too far into actually talking about the setups, I want to talk about the timing of the setups, because this is really important in that I don't want overlap. I don't want a setup telling me to do one thing and a competing setup telling me to do something else. I want to eliminate that as much as possible. So I have very distinct time periods for each of these setups. And in fact, the definition of the setups requires certain timings for that particular setup. And once that timing is over, I'm done. I'm moving on to the next setup. So the first timing that happens is what we call the transition period. And the transition period is the end of the ODR session, so around 7:30 Eastern time, until the kind of the opening range starts to build at 9:30. So I can be looking for trades anytime in this time period. Now, my trades might go into other setup time periods, and that's okay. I don't mind stacking trades, but I'm only searching and looking for a setup within this 2-hour time frame for transition trades. So my rules for transition only apply for this 2-hour time period. The next one is the DR formation, and that only happens between 9:30 and 10:25. And to be honest, it really only happens between 9:30 and sometimes you get an early DR formation setup, right? So if I knew we were going up, this might be a long right here. Sometimes you get a kind of a middle of the DR formation setup. So a lot of times you get things that happen around 10 o'clock in the morning. And so that if I were looking to go short, if I had a thesis of going short up here, then I'd be looking for something around this time period. The closer I get to this 10:30 though, the less interested I am in looking for a DR formation trade. I'm looking for getting in early on a setup where I'm expecting this DR, this range, to be formed in a certain way. So that's kind of the rules that I'm looking for there. Then I have pre-confirmation. So pre-confirmation can be anywhere from 10:30 out to 11:30, whenever we end up confirming. So it's really dynamic in terms of the end state for pre-confirmation, but it's usually a pretty narrow time frame. It's usually the most narrow time frame that we have. And then finally, you have your box and time and price. These two overlap. So in this case, you might have a setup for time and price that's happening at or about the same time as a setup for box. And the execution might be a little bit different. The levels might be about the same. So, this is one of the areas where sometimes you get overlap. And so the question is, are you going to stack that, or will you just trade one, as if it's one setup? So not a terrible problem. And particularly for me, because I don't really trade the box heavily, mostly I'm just doing time and price. So it's not really a big issue for me. And that happens everywhere from whatever the confirmation time period is. So in this case, it's 11 o'clock. And you're looking for any entries until your time period for time and price tells you not to. And again, with any of these strategies, any of these setups, these are just when you're looking for the entries. You can be holding for longer. You could be holding the rest of the day for any of these entries, but you're only searching for the entry criteria during these time windows. So I get 4 really great setups out of this approach that eliminates a lot of discretion for me, gives me very clear rules, gives me very specific times that I can trade and be looking for setups. This changes, by the way, the timing changes if you are an early morning trader. So if you're trading in the ODR session, obviously that's going to be different. I am not a European trader, so I don't trade this ODR session. But for me, this is my bread and butter, are these really just 4 setups here that I look for each and every day.